thank you everyone for being here today. I think this is the largest audience I've ever had. So if I faint, just return me to my children in Bromley. So today we'll be talking about accelerating the transition to net zero and how this can be done. The agenda is about, well, we start by talking about what are carbon emissions in the built environment, first of all. Then we'll go through a series of challenges and possible solutions to each one of the challenges. And then we'll have a look at what Turner & Townsend has done only over the past few months. So we have some excellent case studies. And finally, key takeaways. So carbon in the built environment. According to the International Energy Agency, the built environment accounts for 39.9% of global emissions, with transportation and agriculture put together coming to roughly the same amount, and the rest all taking up to about 17%. I think this gives you a perspective of just how relevant and important decarbonizing, intervening in the built environment is. And now the built environment differs from many other economic sectors in that the impact is unlike any other industry when it comes to the emission reduction journey, because it has a fantastic ability, an incredible ability to impact everyone's everyday life. So emissions in the built environment again, can be divided into scopes 1, 2, and 3, where scope 1 are emissions immediately associated with direct operational control, so buildings and owned and controlled emissions deriving from gas boiler emissions or HVAC systems. Scope 2 emissions are typically associated with the purchase of electricity, energy, and cooling, etc., and think district heating networks as well. Now, scope 3 emissions in buildings have to do with maintenance services, repair services. Anytime a piece of equipment is replaced in a building, that goes under or should go under scope 3 emissions, as should water consumption and waste generation and waste disposal out of buildings. Now, for those of you who are interested in greenhouse gas inventories for the built environment, what is missing from this picture? What's not here? So what this slide isn't talking about is embodied carbon emissions. So emissions that are generated when a building is built, when it's constructed, or when it's retrofitted. So these emissions obviously exist. They're called embodied carbon, and they should go also under scope 3, and they should be accounted for always by building owners or building developers. Now, building certifications, and we start getting closer to how net zero can be achieved at a building level. For the beginning of my presentation, we're staying very close to a building development and or building retrofit. So when you are looking into the matter and you want to sort of put in plan a 5-step process where you always start from measuring emissions. And this is often underrated or not carried out at all. So the measure stage is fundamental to knowing where you're starting from, where your building is starting from in terms of emission baseline trajectory. And the second step is not the action, it's the commitment. So you need to know where you're starting from, where your baseline emissions are likely to sit, and then the commitment element is fundamental. We'll talk about it later, but commitment means commitment by the developer, commitment by the investors, commitment by the building owner, and commitment and alignment with a way vaster decarbonization strategy that should be in place at organization level. And then reducing, so making all those choices during a building development or retrofitting when it comes to even menial technological and technical equipment that consistently bring that emission profile down. And the procurement of energy and renewable energy as well fits very tightly in that view. So decarbonization doesn't only happen during the building construction stage, it happens vastly during the building's operational stage as well. And finally, as my colleagues were saying earlier, it also comes down to abating those residual emissions during the building's operational lifetime through the purchase of offsets and other solutions. Now, building certifications, we have, the whole right-hand side of the slide is dedicated to this. I don't know if you can read them, but there is the whole complete list of existing building certifications applicable worldwide on the left-hand side, and then some regional specific ones on the right-hand side. Now, building certifications are paramount. It can be a beautiful instrument to reach low carbon in the built environment. However, only a few of them are built to do so. So when it comes to choosing building certifications, the parties making the decision should really do informed decision, looking into what the building certification is going to grant. Is it wellness in the building? Is it a comfortable living space? Or is the energy efficiency the focus? Or is it the achievement of net zero? And choose accordingly. It's not a label that goes on the building. It's not a sticker that will remain attached to the end product. So it's important to choose certifications that are aligned with what the developers and the owners intend to achieve through that development. If you have any questions in particular concerning which building certifications are better or least aligned with decarbonization, please reach out to me after this keynote. And let's now delve into challenges, typical challenges to decarbonizing the built environment. So we can sort of divvy them up into 4 categories: organizational challenges, financial challenges, technological challenges, and external. From an organizational perspective, we see clients struggling sometimes at the very inception of the project to build the business case. So why should we invest in this very costly, very complex net zero building project? Now, what we have seen work in that case is the quantification of benefits in an accurate way, where benefits are articulated over a long time period, taking into account sometimes decades of operational lifetime of a project, but also the accurate quantification of the costs of non-intervention, the costs of inaction. And that helps build a resilient business case that engenders trust and therefore investment. Stakeholder buy-in is probably the #1 enemy to decarbonizing buildings, especially at the retrofit stage. So stakeholder buy-in means not only the buy-in of the investors in the project, the owners, because usually they are the ones that have the greatest conviction in achieving, the net zero objectives. But sometimes stakeholders that can generate problems are often the ones you least think about. It's cost management, it's project management. Those who are really focusing on the deadlines are sometimes bypassing some of the steps that are required to achieve net zero. Building designers as well, there are all sorts of priorities that go into projects. Luxury and beauty sometimes can risk colliding against efficiency, energy efficiency, cost efficiency. So a very careful management, a very close management of stakeholders is paramount. Then there are skills gaps. So sometimes we see clients hiring the best design firms or cost management firms, but then sustainability is not a mainstream skill. And so the entire industry has to learn to adapt to the pace and enable time for upskilling. So I don't know if you've ever been in those stages of your life where maybe you're close to a promotion and you're given new responsibilities that you've never been given before. You have to start looking into finance or invoicing, and you're up for it, but you need time to upskill yourself. So any diligent person would do exactly that before facing those responsibilities, would take the time out and learn and, consult others who already know, etc. Now, the built environment globally is exactly at this stage right now. It's been given a task that it never been given before. And as is, globally, by and large, it's still unprepared. There isn't a wide awareness of the most energy efficient solutions, the most energy efficient or carbon efficient, low carbon materials, of the techniques, of the whole life cycle carbon accounting. So, by and large, all projects that aim for low carbon or zero carbon should, bake in the time, the sort of implicit time for learning within their teams. And then data quality is obviously another challenge. From the financial end, there are long payback periods. So that is one of the hindrances of investing in net zero capital projects. So the solution to that is to start looking into whole life cost assessments, and so taking a whole life approach to pricing decarbonization initiatives. So there's plenty of solutions from rooftop solar that are costly upfront, but then have a payback period of say 5 to 10 years. Insulation, foam insulation is way more efficient than fiberglass, yet it's more costly. And so to make those choices, we are called to think upon a longer, time frame than we currently do. And this requires optimism, which is probably one of the prerequisites to decarbonizing the built environment. Another obstacle can be the division between capital budget and operational budgets of building, which makes it, again, easier to go for solutions in the built state that then do not end up being the most energy efficient or carbon efficient during the operational stage of a building. And then, obviously, the leasing conundrum. The building is not my building, the project is not I don't own it, but so where do responsibilities lie? Well, green leasing and having clear clauses built into every lease contract is becoming more important, more relevant. Some of the technological challenges are, retrofitting and reuse. So the fact that we're more often called to design buildings that are low carbon and retrofit them to these stages, but there is a limited supply of materials and also skilled labor to carry out the work. The no one-size-fits-all approach, the whole life carbon approach and requirements, and then reliance on external innovations. These are all technological challenges that we all face these days. And some of these solutions are thinking about circular economy, so designing buildings and infrastructure that are based upon the concept that every component should be reusable, dismountable, repurposed in the future, or recycled in an easy way. This is what makes retrofitting projects feasible, within low carbon budgets. The whole life cycle approach means that when we face decarbonization in the built environment, we should really make a whole life or embodied carbon the currency of the conversations with all stakeholders. So what we're seeing often these days is that whole life or embodied carbon is accounted for around REBA stage 3, the beginning of REBA stage 3. Now, what this means is that this information comes in too late. It should be baked in, it should be estimated from REBA stage 0, and then updated throughout every REBA stage, thinking about, REBA in the UK. And it should become a common currency across all contractors working on a real estate project, so that everyone is aware of how the choices that they make in procurement, in mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineering go to affect the end embodied carbon of a building. Some of the external challenges are legislative requirements, increasingly complex and sometimes confusing and overriding, the uncertainty of policies, regulatory compliance, and also geographic specificities. Now, what we've seen working here is, again, a strong collaboration within the industry towards upskilling each other and learning together with industry peers to make sure that compliance is a baked-in journey that we all carry out together. And also making choices that are aligned with a wider ESG strategy. It should never be about one building, however much of a landmark development that is. It should always be a choice that's made in line with an organization's way larger ESG journey and sustainability goals. Now, I've skimmed through the challenges and the solutions because otherwise we'd be here for a very long time. And I wanted to bring to you some of our case studies. So Turner & Townsend has been working in the built environment for 79 years, and it is the sector in which we operate the most. These are 3 projects that we have completed over the past year, so they're very recent, and for us, they're the tip of the iceberg. Now, these projects, if you follow the bolted out word, they quickly tell you some of the services that we deliver. But out of these 3 case studies, I wanted to focus on the middle one, the central one, which is, again, a headquarters deep retrofitting project in London for a global financial institution. Now, this is an example of how you can rescue a project where sustainability should have been put at the forefront from the beginning. So in this case, we were called on to make the building sustainable at RIBA Stage 2. And when we arrived, we found, obviously, the usual array of contractors and stakeholders who'd been hired, and they were working away and firing away to meet all the RIBA deadlines. We also found that the building was aiming for a very high, very ambitious building certification at platinum and gold standards, respectively, BREEAM, LEED well, as well as neighbors. Now, we also found that the building certifications were being addressed by a contractor who's being very technical, but also very silent about what to do to make sure that those points were being achieved. And so the coast management team had entirely diverse priorities from sustainability, and it appeared to be too late. So the first thing that we did was to estimate the embodied carbon of the final project at RIBA Stage 2 with the information that was present and available at that point. And when we disclosed that to the client, it appeared it was too high compared to what they wanted to achieve, to their ambition. And so we basically put the developer and the project manager and the coast management company, as well as the architectural and the retrofit designers and the MEPs in the same room. And we took stock of where we were, where the project was bound to go without a change of direction. And that was providential because so many choices had to be remade and tweaked and changed to enable the building in its operational stage to have nigh on zero operational emissions. But this is a lesson learned that means that if you're thinking about low carbon buildings and accelerating net zero, sustainability should be called at the very beginning. And those conversations should be had from the start concerning realistic but also ambitious goals in terms of quantifiable embodied carbon intensity of the final building. And the set of priorities should be very clear from the onset concerning what is taking precedence. Is it aesthetic beauty? Is it elegance? Is it energy efficiency? Is it low carbon? Because that is going to impact choices on every level, including what goes on in the basement and what you decide to put, in small spaces. So this is a little bit about what we can do at Turner & Townsend. Now, to wrap up my presentation, I was thinking about, the title of my presentation, which is Accelerating the Journey to Net Zero. And I thought, well, let's take inspiration from contexts where this is already happening, where that's already happened. And so I looked at, well, in Europe and around the world, and some contexts emerge as very advanced or more advanced than, we currently are as an average global situation when it comes to decarbonizing their built environment. And so some of these contexts are Scandinavia, which is a benchmark for low carbon net zero buildings. France surprised me, for example. I'm Italian, I did very also close to cross-border with France. I didn't know that their embodied carbon of residential estate, the average was 200 to 400 kilograms, and the Netherlands as well. So these contexts have had a commitment, a solid commitment to sustainable building practices. There is a common widespread use of renewable materials, energy-efficient designs, and advanced construction techniques. And somewhere else around the world, Canada shines for the work that they've done in terms of public awareness and education towards decarbonizing the built environment. And Singapore is the only country that mandates minimum environmental sustainability standards for buildings of a relatively small scale, so just over 5,000 square meters. And the embodied carbon emissions of some other countries around the world are on the right-hand side. So you can see the United States' average is about 300 to 600 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent per square meter. The United Kingdom is doing very well, 200 to 500. It's one of the lowest ones, whereas some other countries still exceed the 600 kilograms of CO2 per square meter. So now you can see that the range is not excessive. It doesn't vary from 1 to 700. Globally, it's right there. So countries who are at the forefront right now are at the forefront for, about an average of 100 grams per square meters. So again, the paramount importance of assessing the embodied carbon of your project before you get to it. Having taken inspiration from these varied contexts, I realized that there were some common threads, and my team and I have been reflecting on this, and I think this is the final takeaway from my presentation. So what are the preconditions to accelerating decarbonization in the built environment? We counted 7. The first one are progressive policies. Commitment, government's commitment, ambitious commitments to climate, to the fight against climate change, but also to living more sustainably in a greater harmony with biodiversity, with the nature, with the environment at large, in a way that creating built environments that are also equitable from a social perspective. The second condition, which doesn't seem particularly fair, but is an abundance of renewable energy sources. What these countries seem to have in common is indeed an overabundance of low carbon energy. And so the thought arises of, are these countries committing to lower carbon built environments because they can count on such a low carbon energy network and system? Or is it the other way around? Are these countries so well endowed when it comes to renewable energy because they made the commitment decades ago? And then innovative design principles, reducing material waste, promoting sustainable construction materials, renewable energy, integrating energy efficient technologies. So design that is intending to be net zero, low carbon is innovative, and that innovation has to be unleashed, accepted, widespread. The fourth precondition are efficient construction techniques. Prefabrication, modular building, materials and homes and offices and buildings are pre-built so as to minimize waste, reduce waste, increment precision, and fundamentally micro-reduce the embodied carbon of the project. The fifth condition is a collaborative culture. Some countries really excel at these. I'm thinking Denmark, the Netherlands. So creating an environment where the construction industry, businesses can reach out to government and lobby in a way that's functional, that works, and government listens to them. And local communities have a right to take part in the decision-making process. Is a fundamental precondition to accelerating the journey. The sixth one is incentives and financial support. All of these contexts, all of these geographic areas, havens for low carbon built environments share wealthy incentives given out to, in the form of tax reliefs, grants, low interest loans to whoever wants to install in renewable, lower carbon and more energy efficient buildings. And finally, the seventh is public awareness and education. Change starts from the basis. Change starts from whoever owns a house or an office. And for you, for each and every one of us owning that, being lucky enough, change begins when the next time we need to retrofit our house or build out a new building, we know why we want a low carbon building. So this is a lot. I hope you found it useful. You can find me outside after the presentation, and you can reach out to me at Turner & Townsend.
Sara, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.